Welcome to your daily dose. My name's Robert. It's my pal Susan, and she is full. I can see it in her smile. I can see it from side to side. What's going on, Susan?
I'm reflecting on a book that you read recently by Brene Brown
Oh,
called
which
Rising
one?
Strong.
Oh, Rising Strong. Brene Brown, shout out.
Shout out, Brene, man. Yeah, we're like breathing your air.
Huh?
And I didn't really understand what that book was about. And
Mm,
I think I needed to get to the place where I was ready for it. I hadn't even seen it. It was just you holding it up and you quoting it all the time. So I knew that there was something there for me. And then I drifted into this confusion about story and what story is. And of course, she's a storyteller researcher. So that's a concept right there. In getting into the book, I realized that rising strong is the thing that happens after one dares greatly and one puts oneself in the arena and one allows oneself to be vulnerable and look at the stuff that may be holding you back and scaring you. And I realized some parts of my life that I need to dive into a lot more that have opened up with all of this. I think the reason that I was afraid of giving story the verisimilitude that you did, and I sort of said, yeah, but isn't that like fiction? And you're like, no, there are larger truths in stories. um I think I have figured out that when I was growing up, I things that I had trouble with got put someplace in my head, and I was afraid of conflict, afraid to go there. um and so they they got wrapped up in a way that they were untouchable to me. I think I
mm.
need to stop talking for a second, maybe give you a chance to say anything that might be there, just because I'm.
I love everything you're saying, first off. And there is something screaming in my head that I wanted to yes and to you, which is that stories are feeling, okay? Because that divide that you're talking about, and this really goes to the whole qualitative, quantitative, which Brene talks about, which I have experienced too. And I read a very interesting article about many in academia who have a hard time with Joseph Campbell because he is so experiential as opposed to literal. And they have a hard time with metaphor, same type of thing. People who really, they take him down academically for those sorts of things. And academia, fitting in many scientific, in a logical world, does that. So storytelling, what it does is it honors our emotions. Think of what stories are meant to do. They're there to stir us, right? They are there to reflect to us emotions that are familiar to us, situations that tell us things. And if they're exactly as you described them, you have put things away in boxes to keep them safe. So they weren't there to maybe hurt, scare, whatever, anything else they could do to you
I
for
think
self
I
protection.
and was reflecting a moment ago that when I sensed conflict, when I was uneasy about something. So there's your emotions. But what this book has taught me is I then made up a story about that event, and I carried that story, which isn't a real story. I mean, it wasn't a really what happened, but that became my story, and I had to defend it, and I had to
Oh,
react to it and
oh,
stuff.
of course. And how beautifully vulnerable her story of her and Steve, right? And then she gets into the argument and she says, okay, Steve, the story I'm telling myself is, and then he says, well, the story I'm telling myself is, that is the most gorgeous representation of a couple not getting it with each other because they're both locked in their story camps. And
But
I
to be
can't say
able to
enough about that.
to say that, to get it, to boy, you talking about being vulnerable.
And to own your stuff, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love it.
that's what happened to me as I was reading this book and getting closer and closer to the end. It's just like so important to me, and I know I need to sit in it more. But I got that. I reframed stuff and
Mhm.
then hung on to the reframe as the truth. But then I recognized I did that. So it was a story. And so story all got tossed into,
I love what you just said. That you heard the reframe as the truth, and there it is. There's that underline, the truth, right? That anybody thinks they hold the truth, the higher ground. You're not seeing the truth, not my truth or my story, the truth. Oh, so deep, so powerful. We'll continue another time. We've got so much Brene to talk. This is your daily dose.